All right, so continuing with the Pythagorean relationship, we want to look at, first of all, the relationship between the sides in any right triangle. And basically, I mean, yes, I could say a squared plus b squared equals c squared for sure. But I'm going to say it in a different way and write it down in a different way. And this maybe just helps to clarify that. If you square the two shorter sides on any right, we'll try that again, right triangle, and add those squares, you will get the square of the longest side on that same triangle. All right, which then takes us, of course, into our first question here. So we've got here, we are given shorter legs, and we need to find the length of the hypotenuse, and we'll have to round it to the nearest tenth. So a couple things that we have to do every time, and we have to make sure that we remember to show your work. That's just going to help to make sure that, you know, on the very basis level, it'll help you to make sure that you get all the marks you can get on a test, because I'll be able to see what work you've done. But for just yourself, it's also going to make sure that you're not forgetting to do something. So what do we have to do? Well, we have to take the square of the two sides, which are labeled conveniently a and b. So a squared, and we're going to add that to b squared. And that should eventually, in the end, give us c squared. All right, in this case, we need to find out the length of that hypotenuse, and so we'll take the square root of this c squared number once we figure it out. So a squared is, well, a is 7, so we're going to have to do 7 squared plus b is 10, so 10 squared, and this is just my formula that I'm using here, is equal to whatever c squared is going to be. So 7 squared, I should know, is 49 plus 100, sorry, 10 squared is 100. 100 is equal to c squared. I still don't, I can sort of add that in my head already, but I officially don't know yet, but now I'm going to add them, and I'm going to find out that, in fact, 149 is equal to c squared. So if we were to make a square using side C as one of the sides of the square, that square would have an area of 49 meters squared. That's the question, though. I'm wanting to find out what is the length of side C. And so mathematically, to do that, I'm going to have to find out what the square root of this is. Okay, so algebraically, I do the same thing to both sides. Take the square root of both sides. Now the square root of c squared is just going to be c. And the square root of 149 has to be figured out, tells us up here, to the nearest tenth. So that's 1 decimal place. So we're going to go 149. We're going to take the square root of that. My calculator spits out to me 12.2065556157333, and so on. But to the nearest tenth, that rounds to 12.2. And I should put my units in here, 12.2 meters. Now, check my work. So let's go back and check it. Now this is the fun of checking my work. I've done half the checking already. So I make sure, did I get the number right here? 7 squared, yep. 10 squared, yep, that's good. 149, yep, that's correct. Okay, well now let's find out what 12.2 squared is. Because 12.2 squared should be the same, or very close to the same as 149. I have rounded, so when I check my work, it's not going to be perfect, but it just needs to be close. 12.2 squared, so 12.2 times 12.2. My calculator spits out to me 148.84. That's real close to 149. I'm happy. All right. I will show you the check on the next one here, but we'll call it good for this one. All right, find h to the nearest centimeter, check your work. All right, so in this case here, right, we've got our shortest is f, our next is g, longest is h. So in this case, using the letters they've given us, f squared plus g squared should be equal to h squared. Again, I don't know what h squared is yet, but I'm going to figure it out because I know what f and g are. So f squared is going to be, well, 6 times 6, or 6 squared, plus g squared, going to be 10 squared. That's going to be equal to h squared. Again, this is just my formula. So 6 squared is 36, and 10 squared is 100. All right. Add those two up. That is nice and easy to add. 136 is equal to h squared. So again, if I was looking for a square and what the area of the square would be would be attached to side h, it's 136 centimeters squared. Beautiful, I'm done. But I'm not done because I want to find what is this length. So again, once I've added all this up, I now go ahead and take my square root. And it says to the nearest centimeter. So basically I'm rounding to the nearest whole number. And using what I know about square roots already, I'm going to make a guess that that's going to be real close to 12, because I know the square root of 144 is 12. But let's just double check with our calculator here. Square root of 136 is 11.6619. I look at that, is that 11.66 or 11.6619, whatever the big long number is that closer to 11 or 12? It is closer to 12, so rounded to the nearest whole number is going to be 12 centimeters. Now, if I do the check, let's do the check here. Basically, I'm going to check this by using the Pythagorean theorem. This is the stuff we've just been working with, right? I figure out, okay, square over here, square over here should be equal to the size of this square over here. We're going to pretend those are all squares. So I've already figured out 136 is these two here together. Right, those two, right, are equal to 136. So really, I can look at this, and if I do my little check, left side, right side, right. So the check on my left side is going to be this 36 plus 100 is 136. My right side is going to be this h squared. Now, I rounded this, right? So is it going to be perfectly the same? No, it's not. But 136, oh, sorry, let's try that again. Let's actually finish this off. So I've got 12 squared. I simplify this, becomes 144. And when I look at this, I'm like, wow, okay, 136 is close to 144. So I do my little squiggly equal sign to mean approximately is equal to 144. They're close, right? It's not like I'm 30 or 40 off. I'm 8 off, but I rounded that quite a bit. Perfect, away I go. If I want to be really careful with this, I go back and I say, okay, well, what did I get on my calculator? Well, that was that 11.6619 something. So 11.6619 times 11.6619, I got 135.999, which is very close to 136. So yes, I'm good. All right, this takes us on to maybe a little bit more tricky stuff. We'll see. In this case, I have the long side of one of the short sides. I need the other of the short sides. So we have to think about this just a little bit. Remember our basic formula was a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay, in this case, short squared plus other short squared equals long squared. Sorry, right? So in this particular one, the way the formula normally would be written is going to be d squared plus e squared is equal to f squared. But in this case, I have f squared. I have f and I have d, so I can figure out f squared. I can figure out d squared. I don't have this one. I'm going to have to figure out e. So if I look at this, I'm saying, oh, I want to get e squared by itself. Well, what's the opposite operation? I'm going to subtract d squared from both sides. And so I'm basically moving this d squared thing to the other side. How do I get rid of it? I subtract d squared from this side, which actually in effect moves it over to this side. And so I've got subtracting d squared over here. Now I've got a new formula. E squared equals long squared f squared minus the short squared that I know. All right, let's figure it out. E squared now is equal to, f is 41, so 41 squared minus 9 squared. E squared is equal to, that's supposed to be an equal sign. Let's actually make it one. 41 squared is not one that I know off the top of my head. You maybe do, but 41 times 41 is 1,681. 1,681 minus 81. This works out quite nicely, I'm seeing. E squared then is going to be equal, hey, I can do this subtraction in my head. 1,681 minus 81 is 1,600. Check it on your calculator if you don't believe me. And I want to find out what side length E is, right? This 1,600 units would be millimeters squared, would be the size of the square that we built over here. But we're going to square root this so we can find out what E is. And E here is going to be equal to 40. And put in my units, millimeters. All right, let's check our work. Well, if we check our work, we should know that 9 squared plus 40 squared should give us 1,681. So let's check it and see. All right, so we'll go back and use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So left side and right side. Ooh. A squared plus b squared should be equal to c squared. Let's check and see if they are. So a squared, okay, that's our short one here. That's going to be 9 squared. Actually, I should be using, let's try this again. D squared plus e squared should be equal to f squared. So here we've got 9 squared plus the number we came up with here, which is 40 squared, should be equal to 41 squared. Let's check and see. So 9 squared is 81. Punch into my calculator if I need to. 40 squared is going to be 1,600. 40, oops, this is supposed to be 41 squared, sorry. 41 squared, which we figured out before. I'll check it again. 41 times 41 is 1,681. I can sort of do this math in my head, and it checks. They're both left side and right side are the same. This is, we've been told it's a right triangle. We figured out the other short leg, which was in this case 40. All right, let's move on. One more practice one here. You try this one without my help to start with. Okay, so your turn. Give this a try. Check. I'll give some hints here if you need help. So again, I've got r squared, or r and s are my short sides, t is my long side. If you think you've heard enough hints, pause it and then try it on your own and then follow along to see what you need to do. All right. So if we write out the equation the normal way, it would be r squared plus s squared equals t squared. All right, if I look at this now, I know r and t, so I really want to move the r to the same side as the t, so let's subtract r squared from both sides. Hey, that's going to leave s squared by itself. That's what I want to find. Perfect. So s squared is equal to, let's start plugging in numbers already, 52 squared minus 20 squared, which means s squared, of course, is going to be equal to, well, I need a calculator for that one. Maybe you don't, but that's one I don't know off the top of my head. 52 squared is 2,704. Minus 20 squared. 20 squared I do know is 400. All right. Hey, I can do this subtraction in my head. S squared is then going to be equal to 2,304. Again, that would be the size of that many centimeters squared would be the size of the square that I could make on side S. But I don't want the size of that square, I want the length. So square root of that, square root of that, square root of s squared is simply just s. Square root of 2,304, oops, try that again. $2,304, take the square root of that, works out nicely to 48. Again, put my units in centimeters. I can check that, right? If this is a right triangle, which this here thing says it is, r squared plus s squared should equal t squared. So let's check that and see. So 48 times 48, that gives me my, okay, that's 2,304. 20 times 20, yeah, that's 400. Plus 400, oops. 2,704, okay. And then I check and say, okay, 52 squared, 52 times 52. Try that again, 52 times 52, 52 squared, 2,704. Left side and right side are the same. It checks. Your turn. Go and get to work. Your assignment's on the sheet that you've got. For sure, first period, let's get questions 1, 3, and 5 done. Get started on the day 2 assignment second period. If you finish up, give those two there a try. Thanks. Have fun.